There comes a time when you can no longer explain your life by luck, talent, or connections. A time when what's happening in your story defies human logic. That's when the fingerprints of God show up so clearly that no one, not even your enemies, can deny it. His presence becomes undeniable, unshakable, and unmistakable. You see, when God steps into your life, he doesn't come to take sides. He comes to take over. He doesn't just sprinkle a little blessing here and there. He redefines your reality, rearranges your priorities, and rewrites your story so powerfully that people start asking, what happened to you? Have you ever been in a season where everything felt blurry, where every direction looked the same and you didn't know which way to go? Life can throw us into moments like that, moments where decisions seem heavy, options feel overwhelming, and nothing makes sense. Maybe right now you're standing at a crossroads wondering, what should I do next? Which door should I walk through? What if I make the wrong choice? If that sounds familiar, I've got good news for you. Confusion is not your final destination when God is present. Because when God steps in, clarity follows. His presence has a way of cutting through the fog and showing you the way forward. You don't have to have all the answers when you're walking with the one who holds the answers. The problem for most of us is that we want clarity before we move. But God often gives clarity as we move in obedience to his presence. It's like headlights on a dark road. You don't see the entire highway at once, but you see enough to take the next step. That's how God works. His presence doesn't always reveal the full picture immediately, but it gives you enough light for your feet so you don't stumble. Think about it. How many times have you worried about the future, stressed about the details, and worn yourself out trying to control things? And yet the moment you surrendered it to God, something shifted. That's because peace and clarity always live in the same place, his presence. When he is near, confusion cannot stay. When he is at the center, direction becomes clear. It doesn't mean life gets easy, but it does mean your path gets illuminated. The truth is, confusion isn't always from God. He's not the author of confusion, he's the author of peace and order. So if your mind is spinning with anxiety and fear, it's time to check who's speaking into your life. Are you listening more to the noise of the world or to the whisper of his spirit? Because the more time you spend with him, the more you recognize his voice. And the more you recognize his voice, the less room confusion has to dominate your decision. Picture this. You're standing in a crowded room full of voices, everyone talking at the same time, and you're trying to hear someone specific. At first it's hard, but the more time you spend with that person, the more familiar their voice becomes. Eventually, even in the noise, you can pick their voice out instantly. That's how it works with God. The more time you spend in his presence, the more you'll recognize his direction, even when life feels chaotic. The secret isn't getting rid of every other voice, it's tuning your heart so clearly to his that every other voice fades into the background. Here's what many people don't realize. Clarity isn't found in having every detail. Clarity is found in trusting the one who already knows every detail. That's why his presence is the key. You might not know how the bills will get paid, how the relationship will work out, or how the dream will come to life. But you can know this. When God is present, your steps are ordered. You don't have to see the whole staircase. You just have to take the first step. He shows you. And sometimes God will allow seasons of confusion just to push you closer to him. Because if you had all the answers, you wouldn't need him. If the path was crystal clear, you wouldn't pray. But when life feels blurry, it forces you to lean in, to seek him, to press into his presence. And when you do that, he does what only he can do. He brings clarity that doesn't even make sense to the natural mind. You'll find yourself saying, I don't know why, but I just know this is the right move. That's what happens when you walk with God. You start operating by divine direction, not just human reasoning. So if you're in a season of uncertainty right now, don't let confusion paralyze you. Don't let fear freeze you in place. Instead, use it as an invitation to get closer to God than ever before. Because when he shows up, he doesn't just give you information. He gives you illumination. And that light will lead you through the darkest nights and the toughest decisions. Have you ever felt like you weren't enough? Like no matter how hard you tried, your strength just wasn't enough to handle what life was throwing at you. Maybe you've been carrying a weight that feels too heavy. Maybe the responsibilities on your shoulders seem bigger than your ability to handle them. And maybe deep down you've said to yourself, I can't do this. I'm not strong enough. If that's you, I want you to hear this truth. Your weakness is not the end of your story. It's the starting point for God's power. That's because God specializes in showing up where you feel most inadequate. He doesn't wait for you to be perfect before he steps in. He doesn't need you to have it all together before he moves. In fact, he often waits until your strength runs out. So there's no doubt about who deserves the glory when the breakthrough comes. The place you feel weakest is the very place he wants to display his strength. Think about this. When you're at the end of yourself, that's where he begins. When you feel empty, that's when he fills you. When you feel broken, that's when he starts building. Because if you could do it all by yourself, you wouldn't need him. And sometimes God allows seasons of weakness to remind you that the source of your power is not you, it's him. Have you noticed how we live in a world that worships strength? Everywhere you look, people are trying to project confidence, competence, and control. Social media is full of people showcasing their best moments, their biggest wins, their strongest selves. But let's be honest, you don't always feel strong. There are days when you wake up and wonder how you're going to make it through. There are moments when you feel like collapsing under the pressure. And in those moments, the enemy whispers, see, you're not enough. You'll never make it. But here's the truth. The enemy doesn't want you to know. God never asked you to be enough. He asked you to trust the one who is. Imagine a power outlet. The outlet is the source of electricity, but your device only works when it's plugged in. It doesn't matter how new your device is, how advanced the technology is. Without connection, it has no power. That's you without God. You can have talent, skill, experience, but without his presence, you'll run out of energy. But the moment you connect to him, everything changes. Suddenly you can handle what you thought would break you. Suddenly you can endure what you thought would crush you. Why? Because the power flowing through you is greater than the pressure coming against you. And here's the beautiful thing about God's strength. It's not just enough to get by. It's more than enough. He doesn't just give you barely enough energy to survive the day. He gives you supernatural endurance to thrive in situations that would have taken others out. When his strength shows up, you start doing things you never thought you could do. You start walking in confidence you never knew you had. You start facing giants you used to run from, not because you're strong in yourself, but because you know who's fighting with you and for you. Maybe you're in a season right now where you feel completely drained. You've prayed, you've tried, you've done everything you know how to do, and still the weight feels too much. That's the moment to shift your focus. Stop looking at what you can't do and start leaning on what he can do. Because when you're weak, he is strong. When your strength fails, his strength never does. And his presence isn't just a comfort, it's an empowerment. It takes the weakest parts of your life and turns them into testimonies of his greatness. Here's the thing. Strength in God's kingdom doesn't come from pretending you have it all together. It comes from admitting that you don't and inviting him in. That's why the strongest people you'll ever meet are not the ones who never fall. They're the ones who know how to fall on their knees and cry out for help. Because in that moment of surrender, something powerful happens. God steps in His power rushes in like a flood. Suddenly, the things that once intimidated you don't scare you anymore. The mountains that seemed immovable start to shift. The storms that looked like they would destroy you only prove how strong your anchor really is. Think about this. Every great story in the Bible started with someone who felt inadequate. Moses said, "I can't speak." Gideon said, "I'm the least in my family." David was just a shepherd boy. Over and over again, God took people who felt unqualified and did extraordinary things through them. Why? Because their weakness created space for his strength. And the same is true for you. You don't have to be the strongest, the smartest, or the most talented. You just have to be connected to the one who is. Have you ever noticed how peace feels like a rare commodity in today's world? Everywhere you look, there's stress, there's pressure, there's chaos. People are overwhelmed by uncertainty, worried about tomorrow, and consumed with fear about what's coming next. Anxiety is skyrocketing. Depression is everywhere. And if we're honest, maybe you felt it too. That restless feeling in your soul that keeps you up at night. The weight in your chest that makes it hard to breathe. That voice in your head that keeps asking, what if things don't work out? What if everything falls apart? But what if I told you that peace isn't the absence of problems? Peace is the presence of God. Because the truth is, life will never be completely calm. Storms are part of the journey. Challenges will come. Obstacles will rise. But here's what sets you apart when God is with you. You can have peace in the middle of the storm. You can walk through chaos and still keep your head high. You can face uncertainty and still feel secure. That's not normal. That's supernatural. That's the evidence that his presence is with you. Let's be real. Anyone can feel calm when everything is perfect. Anyone can smile when life is easy. But true peace isn't tested when the sun is shining. It's tested when the winds are howling, when the waves are crashing, when life is unpredictable. And that's when God steps in to remind you that peace is not a feeling you chase. It's a gift you receive when his presence fills your life. The world can't give it and the world can't take it away. Have you ever seen someone who should be falling apart but isn't? Maybe they just lost their job. Maybe they're battling sickness. Maybe they're going through something that would break most people, but somehow they're steady. Somehow they're calm. Somehow they're smiling. And you wonder, how are you holding it together? It's not because they're superhuman. It's because they're connected to a supernatural God. His presence produces a peace that doesn't even make sense to people on the outside. It's the kind of peace that makes others lean in and ask, what's your secret? And the answer is simple, his presence. You see, fear thrives in the absence of God's presence. Anxiety grows when you forget who's with you. But when you are conscious of his presence, fear loses its grip. When you know he's in control, anxiety has no authority. That's why the enemy works so hard to distract you. Because if he can get your attention on your problems, he can keep you from focusing on the presence that brings peace. Think about the times you've panicked. Most of the time it wasn't because God wasn't there, it was because you forgot he was there. Because when you remember he's with you, everything shifts. Suddenly, what looked like a giant becomes small. Suddenly, what felt like the end becomes just a chapter. Suddenly, what seemed impossible doesn't scare you anymore. That's the power of perspective when you know you're not alone. Peace is not passive. It's powerful. It guards your heart. It protects your mind. It keeps you steady when everything around you is shaking. Peace is not weakness. It's strength under control. And the beautiful thing about God's peace is that it's not fragile. It doesn't break under pressure. It doesn't vanish when things get hard. In fact, it shines the brightest when life is the darkest. When you walk with God, peace isn't a luxury. It's your inheritance. Imagine going through life knowing that no matter what happens, you're covered. Imagine facing situations that used to terrify you and now saying, "It is well with my soul." That's what his presence does. It anchors you so deeply that the storm can't move you. It stabilizes you so completely that fear can't shake you. You stop living from a place of panic and start living from a place of confidence, not because everything is perfect, but because you know who holds your life in his hand. And here's what's so incredible. Peace is not something you have to manufacture. You don't have to force it. You don't have to fake it. You just have to stay connected to the source. The same way a branch can't bear fruit without the vine, you can't have lasting peace without his presence. You might try to find it in relationships, money, success, or distractions, but all of that is temporary. The only peace that lasts is the peace that flows from him. So the next time you feel overwhelmed, the next time anxiety creeps in, the next time the storm starts raging around you, ask yourself one question: am I aware of his presence right now? Because the storm might still be there, but when you're aware of him, your soul stays calm. The noise might still be loud, but when you're tuned into him, your heart stays quiet. That's what it means to have a peace that passes understanding. A peace that doesn't make sense to your situation, but makes perfect sense to your spirit. Have you ever faced a closed door in life? A dream you wanted but couldn't reach? An opportunity that slipped through your fingers? Maybe you've worked hard, prayed hard, done everything you know how to do, and still the door stayed locked. It's frustrating, isn't it? Because we live in a world that tells us success depends on networking, hustling, grinding, and knowing the right people. And yes, effort matters, but there's something greater than effort. There's something more powerful than connections. It's the presence of God. When his presence is with you, he opens doors no man can shut. Let that sink in for a moment. No man. That means no boss can stop it. No critic can block it. No hater can close it. When God decides it's your time, nothing and no one can stand in the way. The question isn't, are the doors open? The question is, am I walking with the one who has the keys? Because the truth is, God doesn't need permission to bless you. He doesn't need anyone to vote you in. He doesn't need to consult your past before determining your future. When his presence goes before you, even doors you never knocked on will swing wide open. Have you ever seen God do something in your life that didn't make sense? Maybe you got a promotion you didn't qualify for. Maybe an opportunity came that you didn't even apply for. Maybe favor showed up when you least expected it. That's not luck. That's the result of his presence. Because when God decides to open a door, he doesn't need a keyhole. He makes a way where there is no way. He doesn't just open doors that exist. He creates doors where walls used to be. This is why you don't have to live stressed about who likes you, who supports you, or who's trying to block you. People can only shut doors they control, but they don't control the doors God has for you. They may slam one door in your face, but God can open 10 more that they don't even know about. Stop wasting your energy fighting people who don't want to see you win, and start focusing on staying in the presence of the one who holds the authority to overrule every no in your life. Think about Joseph. His brothers sold him out. He was thrown into a pit, locked in a prison, forgotten by the very people he helped. By all human logic, his future was over, but God's presence was with him. And because of that, every setback became a setup. Every locked door became a step toward the palace. When it was time, no prison, no betrayal, no accusation could stop what God had planned. That's what happens when God opens the door. Nothing and no one can keep it closed. Sometimes the closed doors you're frustrated about are actually God's protection. Because not every door is a good door. Some doors lead to destruction. Some doors would derail your destiny. So if God hasn't opened a door yet, trust that he's not punishing you. He's preparing you. Because when he finally opens the right door, you won't have to force it, fake it, or fight for it. It will open smoothly because his presence is paving the way. And here's something you need to hear. The right door doesn't always look impressive. Sometimes we think the open door will be big, glamorous, and obvious. But often it's small, ordinary, and hidden. That's why you need discernment, and discernment comes from staying close to his presence. Because the door God opens might not look like the door you imagined, but it will lead to the place he promised. Have you ever tried to open a door that wasn't yours? Pulling, pushing, forcing, sweating, only to realize it was locked for a reason. That's what happens when you chase opportunities without God's presence. You wear yourself out trying to make something happen that God never designed for you. But when he opens the door, it won't feel forced. It will feel favored. You won't have to manipulate your way in. Grace will carry you through. So many people spend their lives knocking on doors that aren't theirs. They compare, compete, and compromise just to get access. But what they don't realize is that when God is with you, you don't have to beg for access. Access chases you. You don't have to stand in line. God can move you to the front. You don't have to scheme to be seen. His presence will spotlight you in the right moment, in the right place, for the right purpose. And here's the best part. When God opens the door, he doesn't just open it for you to peek in. He opens it for you to walk through and possess what's on the other side. And no one can close what he has opened. People may try, circumstances may rise, opposition may come, but they can't override the authority of God. Because when he says yes, no one can say no. When he decides to elevate you, no system, no structure, no power can hold you back. Have you ever noticed how people treat you differently when something changes in your life? Maybe you got a promotion, maybe you stepped into a new season, and suddenly the same people who overlooked you before start paying attention. But here's the truth. Not every shift in how people see you comes from what you achieve. Some shifts happen because of who is with you. When God's presence rests on your life, you don't even have to announce it. People can sense it. They may not be able to explain it, but they know something is different about you. Think about that for a moment. There's a glow, a confidence, a strength that can't be manufactured. It's not arrogance, it's assurance. It's the quiet confidence of someone who knows they're not alone. When God's presence is on you, you don't need to fight for validation. You don't need to beg for recognition. Favor speaks louder than self-promotion. His presence becomes your introduction long before you open your mouth. Have you ever seen someone walk into a room and the atmosphere shifts? They don't say a word, but people notice. So that's what the presence of God does. It makes you stand out in spaces where you were once invisible. It puts weight on your words so people lean in when you speak. It creates influence that isn't based on position, title, or popularity. It's based on the anointing that only God can give. Here's the thing, you don't have to wear a sign that says God is with me. You don't have to force people to see your value. When God's presence is evident in your life, people will see it without you saying a word. They'll notice it in your peace when everything around you is falling apart. They'll notice it in your resilience when most people would have given up. They'll notice it in your kindness when others would have turned bitter. That's what makes you different. That's what makes people stop and ask, what is it about them? And don't be surprised when the same people who doubted you have to respect you. The same people who ignored you have to acknowledge you. The same people who underestimated you have to admit that there's something on your life they can't deny. They may not like you, they may not agree with you, but they can't dismiss you because the evidence of God's presence is undeniable. This is why you can't waste time trying to convince people to believe in you. Stop exhausting yourself trying to make them see what you carry. Stop trying to prove your worth to those who refuse to recognize it. When God's hand is on you, he will make it clear to the right people at the right time. And sometimes the shift in perception won't even be about what you say or do. It'll simply be the radiance of his presence on your life. Do you remember David? He was just a shepherd boy forgotten by his own father when the prophet came looking for the next king. Nobody thought he was qualified. Nobody even invited him to the lineup. But the moment the oil flowed on David's head, everything changed. He didn't have to announce it. He didn't have to beg for attention. The presence of God marked him, and from that day forward, people couldn't see him the same way. That's what happens when God chooses you. People's opinions have to bow to God's decision. And here's something powerful. When God changes how people see you, it's not always because you've changed externally. It's because his presence has elevated you internally. You start carrying yourself differently. You stop seeking approval and start walking in purpose. You stop shrinking to fit in and start standing tall in the identity God gave you. And when you do that, people notice not because you're trying to be noticed, but because his presence makes you unignorable. Sometimes God will even use your enemies to confirm what he's doing in your life. They may not clap for you, but they can't deny what's happening. They'll try to figure out how you're getting blessed when they did everything to block you. They'll wonder why doors are opening for you when they tried to shut them. They'll be confused about why people are drawn to you when they tried to discredit you. That's the power of his presence. It overrides opposition and makes you favored in places you were once forgotten. Have you ever wondered why people start treating you differently without you saying a word? It's because presence speaks. It speaks louder than words, louder than credentials, louder than reputation. The presence of God will do what your resume can't. Will place you in rooms your connections couldn't get you in. It will make people listen to you who used to ignore you. It will make people respect you who once disregarded you. And here's the most amazing part. When God shifts how people see you, it's not for your ego, it's for his glory. He changes their perception so they can witness what his presence can do in a life that's surrendered. Because when people see you shining, thriving, standing strong, they'll know it wasn't you, they'll know it was him. Have you ever wanted something so badly that you chased it with everything you had? Maybe it was a career opportunity, a relationship, a dream you couldn't let go of. You rearranged your schedule for it, you sacrificed for it, you gave your all to get it. Why? Because what you value, you pursue. That's human nature. We go after what matters to us. And if there's one thing that should matter more than anything else, it's the presence of God. But here's the reality. His presence doesn't automatically fill every space. It's available to everyone, but it's experienced by those who seek it. Think about that for a second. We live in a culture where everything is about convenience. We want everything fast, easy, on demand. And sometimes we approach God the same way, like he's a drive-through blessing, available whenever we decide to pull up. But his presence is not casual, it's sacred. It's not something we stumble into by accident. It's something we step into with intention. The question is not, do you want God in your life? The question is, are you willing to pursue him? Because the truth is, proximity to God is not about geography, it's about priority. You can be in church and still be far from him. You can sing worship songs and still not be in his presence. You can look spiritual on the outside and still be dry on the inside. Because his presence doesn't come to spectators, it comes to seekers. It comes to those who make space for him in their daily life, not just on Sundays, not just when they're in trouble, but every single day. Have you ever noticed how relationships work? You can't stay close to someone you never talk to. You can't have intimacy without investment. And yet so many people want the benefits of God's presence without the effort of pursuing him. They want his power without his process. They want his blessings without his boundaries. But God says, if you draw near to me, I will draw near to you. That means the first move is yours. That means you can't live distracted chasing everything else, and then wonder why you feel distant from God. Now here's the challenge. There are 1,000 things competing for your attention every day. Social media, deadlines, bills, relationships, entertainment. And if you don't prioritize his presence, those things will consume you. That's why pursuit is intentional. You have to carve out time, not just find time. You have to create room for him, not just fit him into the leftovers of your schedule. Because the truth is, if you're too busy for God, you're busier than he designed you to be. And pursuit is not about perfection. It's about passion. It's about hunger. It's about saying, God, I want you more than I want answer. I want you more than I want success. I want you more than I want approval. That's the kind of pursuit that gets his attention. That's the kind of hunger that draws his presence like a magnet. When you prioritize him above everything else, he begins to show up in ways that leave no doubt he's with you. Think about Moses. He had access to everything, power, influence, resources. But when God said, I'll send an angel to go with you, but I won't go, Moses said, if your presence doesn't go with us, don't send us from here. That's pursuit. That's a man who understood that success without God is still failure. That's a man who valued God's presence more than any promise, more than any possession. And because of that pursuit, he experienced God in ways others didn't. Have you ever asked yourself, why does it seem like some people experience God's power more than others? It's not because God has favorites, it's because some people have a greater level of pursuit. They're willing to wake up early, to spend time with him. They're willing to turn off distractions to hear his voice. They're willing to say no to what others say yes to because they're after something more valuable than comfort. And the reward of that pursuit is not just blessings, it's God himself. Here's what's so amazing. When you pursue his presence, everything else falls into place. Clarity comes. Strength comes. Peace comes. Favor comes. But those things are byproducts of the real treasure, which is him. And the truth is, the more you experience his presence, the more you realize nothing else compares. No amount of money, no level of success, no human relationship can satisfy like he can. That's why people who truly encounter God become unstoppable in their pursuit. They've tasted some